In the wake of all the protests and social unrest over the death of George Floyd, Los Angeles promised to make some changes. Well, changes are taking place. City Attorney Mike Feuer appointed a new special assistant city attorney in the role of equity director. What does that mean? I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Feuer, the city attorney for Los Angeles, as well as our new equity officer, Heather Aubry. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Great. I have to actually start with you because civil rights is in your DNA. I mean, this is something that is, you're part of a legacy family. And first, my condolences over the passing of your father. But your father is very, very well known and very highly regarded in regards to civil rights here in Los Angeles. What was it like being part of that legacy?
It was very special. I have a difficult time articulating just how special my father was to me and how much it means to me that I am, in a sense, carrying on his legacy. He was so committed to the cause of racial justice, social justice, fairness and equality for all. He devoted his life to it. He was a columnist for over 30 years, writing for the premier Black publication in Los Angeles, The Sentinel. And so his voice was out there, his presence was out there. So many people knew and loved him. As a child, I would go around with him to various community events, and it's just, I was very fortunate. I treasure those memories, and I intend to carry on in his legacy the best I can. I'm
sure he'd be very, very proud of what you're doing,
well,
so congratulations. Mike, you made this decision to create this position. Obviously, you've worked with Heather for a long time, but how did you envision what this position would be, and what exactly would be an equity officer, and how will she interact with the diversity, equity, and inclusion?
In my office, I have a small executive team that leads the 1,000-person office that is the city attorney's office here in Los Angeles. I have one position. It's a position called the special assistant. Now, that position had been occupied by Capri Maddox. Capri, as you know, was recently selected to head a new department in the city, a Department of Civil and Human Rights. So I had a vacancy at the top of our charts. This position of special assistant ought to be the person in our office who is powerfully engaged on civil rights issues more generally, but also somebody who can focus both internally and externally on assuring that the remarkable diversity of our office continues and grows, on assuring that our role in communities throughout the city can continue to be to transform neighborhoods, to assure that every member of our community is lifted up. Heather is going to be a continuing champion for values that are deeply important to me. Fortunately, they're not new values for our office. We need to take things to the next level. You know, more than half of our staff is comprised of people of color. More than half of our staff is female. Nearly half of our lawyers are people of color. Those are important statistics, but the statistics just begin to scratch the surface. There's much more we could be doing. And qualitatively and quantitatively, that's going to be a role for Heather to lead.
How do you see your special assistant position reaching out to this Department of Civil and Human Rights, and how those bridges can be created and the kind of dynamism that can happen within the city because of this new initiative?
I see my role as absolutely embodying the importance of equity, not just as a catchphrase or as a concept, but actually implementing it and making it concrete. So internally within the office, spearheading initiatives, collecting data, finding out where we are, listening first and foremost to bridge the divides that still to some extent plague society. You know, it's important to have a deeper conversation, and I'm happy to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. And in terms of the role of advising the new department, I'm very excited about that as well. That department will be at the forefront of a lot of very important conversations and issues around discrimination and racial equity in the city.
Will this influence the kind of cases the city attorney's office takes? Will these conversations influence what kind of areas that you support, get the word out on? I mean, what are the brass tacks of this? What does this actually mean?
You know, that's a really good question, and the answer to much of what you've asked is yes. You know, we're in a city that claims to be the most diverse place in the world. We may be diverse, but we're a highly segregated city at the same time. And one of the things that I really admire about Heather is that Heather is a very direct person who likes to take on issues head on. We're not going to shirk from responsibility. We're not going to try to brush anything under the rug. We're going to be trying to identify the issues in their most direct and candid way and take them on. I was in a conversation with a number of lawyers in our office, and people were expressing their views about some of the racial justice issues of the day. And I stopped and I said, you know what, I don't think everyone's being candid enough. Let's start this all over again. And I recognize that in so doing, that's inviting a critique of the status quo, of where we are. That's how we get better. If we're not prepared to look ourselves in the eye and truly evaluate whether we're doing all we can to advance causes that are kind of catchphrases today, racial justice, social equity, inclusiveness, those are important words, but they don't have much value unless there's action to back them up. And the reason I chose Heather for this job is she's a lawyer and a leader of action.
You obviously have a civil rights background. You have a long legacy, not just from your family, but in terms of your own career. What is it that you know we need to change and do in order to move forward?
The office already has taken a leadership role in terms of LGBTQ and immigration-related issues. There may well be, and I suspect there will be, more opportunities in the area of racial justice and other marginalized groups in being able to have our voice as an office heard in those kinds of cases at the Supreme Court. Certainly there are legislative possibilities that we could inject ourselves into when appropriate. I certainly am very committed to staying engaged with the wider community. I always enjoyed, as an attorney, going out to schools, for instance, in South Los Angeles, where I grew up, and being able to relate to those kids, not as someone coming from the outside and talking to them about how they can come over to my side and, you know, sort of the promised land. It's not about that. It's about telling them, I'm one of you. I came from this very same place, and there's no shame in being from this place, and there's so many good people and so much that we've already accomplished and can continue to accomplish in this community. It's not about just leaving the community, but we can have an impact in the wider community. I think it's just essential for young people to realize that their lives are worth so much more than they may have been led to believe. Just there have been systemic issues of racism, sexism, discrimination against so many groups, the disabled, LGBTQ. Everyone needs to understand their value, their inherent worth from as young an age as possible. As lawyers, we are uniquely situated, right? Because when it comes to civil rights, many of those issues play out in the justice system, in the criminal courts. They also play out in constitutional practice before the Supreme Court. They also can play out in state houses, including in Sacramento, where I once served. They can play out in City Hall. Heather is pointing out they also play out every day on the streets of, again, a very segregated city where there is an enormous gap between rich and poor, an enormous gap between the fulfillment of potential among kids of color on the one hand and white kids on the other, especially when it comes to class and when it combines with race. That's not right. In many ways, that's at bottom what this work is about having, through the actions we engage in, whether it be in court or on the street, making sure that kids know how deeply valued they can be.
Right. Forgive me, I'm going to say something that your father said. A soldier never gives up, he just changes position. So congratulations on your new position.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you so much, Mike, and congratulations. I look forward to hearing from you. I'll give you some time. Let's just settle in.
I'd be happy to return. Thank you.
We'll be back in about 5 minutes, Maria.
There you got it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.